Welcome to the Voices of a Stranger podcast. Here is your host, Reza Garajadaki.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Voices of a Stranger. My name is Reza Garajadaki. I'm the host of this wonderful podcast. I'm super excited today because we have an incredible story. My very good friend for many years, Frances Ber, who's joined us. She's going to share her story of going up to Mount Everest. And she told me the story a couple of weeks ago when I told her about launching the Voice of a Stranger. And I said, you know what? You're going to be one of my very first guests on the show because it is an incredible story of survival. Many of us have seen movies or seen pictures or documentaries on people going up to Mount Everest, but here's someone who actually did it and is very, very, very lucky to be alive. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I want to welcome my very good friend for many years, the wonderful person, athlete, great mom, full of energy, lives life with passion like all of us should. So Frances, so nice to see you. Good morning.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here this morning, Reza. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm really glad you're going to be actually the very first guest on the Voice of a Stranger. So your story is going to launch this podcast. And I know our listeners are going to be absolutely shocked at times at your story. So I want to stop talking and I'm going to give the floor to you. Tell us the story of your adventure up in the Himalayas in Mount Everest.
All right, will do. Thank you so much again for having me here this morning. I'm really honored to be your guest speaker, your first guest speaker. So thank you so much. I'll get right into it. So it was 2013. It was May, June timeframe. And at the time, I was dating someone long distance, pretty well known alpinist, and just had fallen in love and was very excited to be in this relationship with him. And he was asked to be a leader in an expedition leading a number of Toyota actually employees onto Mount Everest to do a trek up to Mount Everest Base Camp. And he really wanted me to go with him, and I wanted to as well. He was sponsored by Toyota at the time, so he was able to convince Toyota to bring me on board, which is wonderful. And so my title was videographer, photographer. I don't have any of those skills, but I learned on the fly.
That's awesome.
So I flew over to Nepal, met up with everybody in Kathmandu, and then we started this trek. It's about a 2-hour long, sorry, not 2 hour, it's about a 2-week long trek. And I was really very excited. And we started trekking with 4 Toyota employees as well as my partner. And it was wonderful. It was really exciting. It's gorgeous up in Nepal. The Himalayas are beautiful and the people there are lovely. So we made it successfully up to Everest Base Camp, which is about 15,000, almost 16,000 feet.
Wow.
And thankfully, everybody survived. Everybody did well. No altitude sickness. Everybody was really happy and everything went well. So at that time, then my partner and I, we decided what we're going to do is we're going to break free from that group and then go do our own expedition after that. So he was able to, speak with everybody to say, okay, you know what, you guys are going to go down with a number of Sherpas, those are guides, and porters, the people that carry all your things. So we said goodbye to everybody, and then they went down the mountain. So then it was my partner and I, and we took one of the Sherpas, a guy named Pemba, and a porter with us. And at the time, my boyfriend was getting prepared to do K2 the following year, the second tallest mountain in the world. And so he wanted to go ahead and use this time as like training. And so the Himalayas are beautiful and perfect for that because, you've got some of the tallest peaks in the world out there. So I just kind of tagged along. I was like, okay, this is great. And he had said to me there might be ice climbing involved. We're not quite sure. He wasn't quite sure exactly where we were going to go after Everest Base Camp. So I said, okay, great. So previously to that, here I live in San Diego, I took a weekend trip up to
Mhm.
Mammoth area to do an ice climbing course. I grabbed one of my girlfriends and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be going to Nepal really soon. Come with me. Let's learn ice climbing. And she was like, sure. So we went up to Mammoth for a weekend. I took an ice climbing course and I'm like, all right, I'm all good. And I have to say, I was pretty fit at the time. I was doing a lot of triathlons, a lot of open water swimming, and then hiking every mountain that I could on the weekends. So I was getting my body super prepared for this trek because I didn't really know what to expect other than
Sure.
it's going to be high altitude, treacherous,
Hmm.
terrain and snow, ice. I don't know. I truly didn't know what to expect, just trying to get myself all prepared. So I've got one weekend of ice climbing experience, which was ridiculous because looking back now, I mean, only serious expert people, get ice climbers and mountaineers should be doing all the things that I did. But
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can do this. And my boyfriend had full confidence in me. And he's like, you can do it. It's great. And I was like, all right, great. So, anyways, fast forward back to where we are. We're at Everest Base Camp looking at the map, trying to figure out where we're going to go after this. Everest is a massive, massive mountain. It's so large, I can't even describe exactly how big it is. But anyways, so there's various peaks on the mountain. So we looked at the map, and not that I could read the map, but him and Pemba, the Sherpa, they were looking at the map, and he said, "Okay, I think this peak is going to be amazing. Let's go ahead and try this. It's called Island Peak, and the summit of that is 20,226 feet. I
Wow.
didn't even think about it. I was like, okay, it's great. We'll do it.
Let's go.
Let's go. I was just so excited,
I'm
and
sure. Yeah.
you're with somebody that you love, and I was literally blindly in love with this man, and
Sure.
I was like,
Sure.
yeah, let's do this. This is great. I had enough gear, so I felt comfortable with having enough, clothing and, I had
Yeah.
crampons, I have an ice axe. I'm like all fully equipped with everything. So I was like, all right, I'm equipped with everything. I've got the, mental strength, physical strength. Let's go. So it was another probably like 2-day trek, I would say, up to the base camp of Island Peak. So we're trekking and trekking, Um, they're speaking in Nepalese. They both speak Nepalese, and I don't speak a word of that, obviously. And so they're doing, most of the talking, and I'm just kind of quiet, tagging along. And we finally get to Everest Base Camp, and I was like, okay, we're here, and you set up your tent and everything. And there was a few other mountaineers there, a few other alpinists. I would say maybe like 6 or 7, something like that. And they had some Sherpas with them as well. And we talked to them, and the plan was for, at least from what I had talked to everybody, was to spend the night there, and then you wake up early in the morning and you start trekking to get to the summit. Okay, just like any mountain generally. And so my partner was like, no, he's like, I want to do it differently. He said, I want to leave later in the day because he says, I don't want to be near any of these climbers. I want to do this more private and solo, I suppose. the the Sherpas disagreed. They said, "You know what? We really think they're predicting that there's a storm coming." Okay,
Wow.
none of our cell phones are working or anything
Of
like
course.
this, so
Yeah.
it's not like we can check the weather and call anybody. I don't even think anybody had a satellite phone, to be honest. No, we didn't. And I didn't even bring my cell phone because I was like
Yeah. What's the
worried that it would
use?
freeze. I
Yeah.
don't know. This is all so new to
Right.
me. So I was like, all right, and I just believed my boyfriend. I was like, well, if he wants to leave later on, okay. He's climbed many mountains before. He's done a lot of 8,000-meter peaks. He's, got a lot more experience than I have on all this stuff. So I just went along. I was like, all right. The Sherpa really kind of had some words with him and was like, you know what? I really don't feel like this is a smart idea. And they spoke a little bit in English, but mostly in Nepalese. But I could tell, this is already, not going
Tricky.
too
Yeah.
well. And looking back now, that was probably like red flag number one. Don't do this. So, so anyways, we spend the night there, and then we get up, and the other climbers are off. They're taking off because it's going to be probably a good 10 hours plus, possibly, to get to the summit. We leave around maybe 5, 6, 7 o'clock. I can't even remember the time, to be honest. And It's snow. There's snow on the
This is
ground.
7 in the morning, you're saying?
No, we left at 7 p.m.
Oh my! So you're going at night?
We're
Wow!
going at night. The other climbers had already taken off in the morning. We said goodbye to them in the morning. They left, yeah, around 7 a.m. So we're leaving, 12 hours later at 7 p.m.
That's
where it's
crazy.
where it's dark,
Yeah.
and we just have our little headlamp. I have my little REI
Right.
headlamp on. I'm like, okay, like I've done millions of treks, and looking back now, I should have had like a big spotlight or something so I
Right.
can see
Right.
where I'm going. And these guys are, well trained for this. The Sherpa, Pemba, he's grown up in Nepal. He does these treks, and my partner at the time, he'd done so many. And here's me just kind of slowly laboring along, and the snow is getting deeper, and my legs are getting tired. And mind you, this is only the beginning. This is just the beginning.
Unbelievable.
And I was thinking, like, did I pack enough food? Did I pack enough water? Because right now we don't have porters
Right.
to bring your stuff up. You're literally on your own. You pack whatever you want in your pack, and that's it. Excuse me. So, anyways, we're going and going and going, and it's dark, and they kind of looked back at me, and they're like, I could tell they were like, come on, speed it up. And then my boyfriend at times was just like, hey, come on, we want to get going. We want to get some good, trekking in. And I was like, okay, I'm doing the best I can, and
Yeah.
just
I mean,
trying to be, cooperative.
now
But
how about oxygen up there? Did you need oxygen?
you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. I think most people would use oxygen, but he doesn't really believe in using oxygen. So that wasn't even a thought. That wasn't even something we talked about.
Wow.
And
That's scary.
yeah, so that hit me hard. I've never had any respiratory issues ever in my life, ever. But I'm like, I could feel my shortness of breath kicking in pretty quick.
I
And this
bet.
is only the beginning.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we're trekking along. Finally, sunrise comes, and I'm like, okay, I can see I can see now what's happening, right? And I can see where I'm trekking, and I'm like, oh my
So you
goodness,
guys hiked all night?
all night long. And we barely took a break. I wanted to take a break. I was
I,
getting tired. This isn't my
that's
deal.
unbelievable. Right.
And on top of all that, I had my menstrual cycle going on. So,
Oh my
like, I was
God.
cramping, and I'm just
God.
like, every
Worst case
bodily
scenario.
function
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just awful. I needed to go to the
Right.
bathroom,
Oh
but they
my.
didn't want to stop. Well,
That's crazy.
predominantly my boyfriend didn't want to stop. So I just kind of like just kept quiet, and I'm like, all right, I'll just keep doing this. We're trekking and trekking. And then finally we get to an area where you have to put your crampons on because now it's getting ice. Now the conditions are getting worse, and it's colder, and it's just miserable, to be honest, miserable. I, didn't expect any of this. And there's areas where you need to, I don't know how to describe it. You need to jump over certain areas
Sure.
because there's like these drops, there's like these
Hmm.
crevasses. So the Pemba, our guide, he was like, okay, watch me. And he's like jumping over this big, huge area. And I'm just like, what in the world is he doing? And I was thinking, I can't do that. And then my partner, then he jumped over, and they're like, all right, Frances, come on. And my heart's beating. I'm like, what? I mean, it's daylight, thank goodness. I can see what I'm doing. And I'm like, my life is in my hands right now. My pack is heavy. I'm miserable, but I'm just keeping it all inside. And I jump over this successfully, and I'm like, okay, good. And I looked back, and I'm like, it was terrifying. I'm looking down, and I'm like, whoa, this is
Wow.
really steep. And if you're in the Mount Everest region, for example, right after Everest Base Camp, there's an area called the Khumbu Icefall, and a
Okay.
lot of Sherpas already prepare, I guess, prepare climbers with these ladders, for
Sure.
example.
I've
I'm sure
seen that.
people have
Yeah.
seen it, like in
Yeah.
movies, right? So there's these, aluminum ladders, and people, trek over these ladders to get from one side to another on the mountain area, right? Well, these were areas that would have been really helpful to have a ladder because I was so scared. I
Sure.
guess they were really confident, but I was just
Yeah.
like, I don't know about this. And I have one picture here. I know some
Yeah.
folks aren't able to see the picture, but I'm going to show it to everybody right
Yeah. There
here.
we go. Yeah. Hold it
And
up.
so here's Pemba.
Put
This
it
is our
closer. Yeah. There we go.
This
There we
is our
go.
wonderful guide. And if you can see,
Yep.
there's these drops, okay?
Unbelievable.
So here he's walking. He's going to have to jump over certain sections. This is the best picture I could get.
That's
But
amazing.
anyways,
Thank
that
you.
kind of gives you a little bit of a visual of how it looks like. Sorry for those that can't see it, but just I hope I can describe it pretty well. And there's one area where we did find a ladder, and here's me all
Oh my
bundled
God.
up
Yeah.
with the ladder, but the ladder's going upwards, which is not helpful at all. You need the ladder to go flat.
That's amazing.
Anyways, so that's
So
me,
you so you guys eventually made it up to the summit?
Oh, well, we made it over all these areas, and then you get to a really sheer, like steep section. And so that section, I might have a picture of that section. And here's a little bit of a picture.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
here's one of us down
Okay.
here. And
Wow.
then you've got to make your way all the way up to here.
Wow.
And then this is the sheer steep section. This is
Okay.
where you're now clipped on, you're roped to your
Sure.
teammates, you're using your crampons, you're using your ice axe, and you're going up. Okay, remember, I've only taken one quick course on this on Mammoth. So I'm like, what am I doing?
All right.
And I fell a couple times. I'm like attached to these ropes and I'm swinging. The wind is horrible.
Oh
It's
my
just it's
God.
freezing. So I swung at one point because I don't know what I'm doing. They were clicking me up to all the carabiners and the ropes, and I was just like, okay, cool. But I swung at one point. I smashed my leg into the mountain. I'm like, this is awful. And I'm just like holding back the tears because I was like,
Yeah.
this is
You can't
this
go
is
back,
so
so you just
difficult.
got to go forward,
You
right?
can't
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I couldn't breathe. It was
Yeah.
so difficult. I didn't even think how high we're going. I didn't even think maybe we should use oxygen. Like my brain was not thinking of anything. And they were going pretty steadily up. And all I could think was, oh my God, I got to keep up with these guys. I got to keep up with these guys. Just, suck it in, deal with the pain. You're fine. Us women, we deal with a lot of pain in life. And this was
Yeah, this is up
one
there.
of them. So anyways, we finally made it up to the top, not the summit yet, because then it's like this ridge where you can see a picture here where it's like the back of like a dragon, for example.
Got
And
it.
so you're here and it's these sheer drops down. So you're here, linked up to your teammates with ropes and you're going along this ridge to get to the summit, which is there. Now remember, Pemba had said, you know what? This is not advisable that we leave this late because the storm is coming. Well, he was right. He was absolutely right. Now the conditions are getting horrible. You can see
Wow.
it getting darker. The clouds are coming. Anyway, we do make it to the summit. It's this tiny, tiny little section. We took a couple pictures, and then here's one picture of me at the summit with Pemba.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm all bundled up, and here's my little guy,
Yeah, that's
right?
awesome.
And it's still blue skies, but it
Yeah.
changed so quickly. The storm kicked in. Then at that point, my partner, I think he was a little annoyed that I didn't make it fast enough up there, but I did the best I could and I was alive. I was just like, okay, we're here. And then Pemba was like, we need to get down. We need to get down immediately because he was super worried about the storm. I was worried about my breathing because I couldn't breathe for one. And so my partner was like, I'm going to unhook from you guys. I'm going to unclip from you guys and I'm going to go down the mountain myself. This is training for me. So I want to go as rapidly down as I can to, I guess, train, prepare, whatever. And I was maybe delirious at the time because I'm not thinking right. It's 20,226 feet. And I just said, okay, whatever. I was like, let's just get down. As long as I got somebody with me, that's fine. So he unclipped and we saw him going down. Here's him making his way down solo down. I guess he knew what he was doing. Yeah, he obviously did.
So he left you there with Pimba.
Right. He left me there with Pemba. And then
Unbelievable.
and Pemba doesn't speak too much English, but he's pointing to the sky and he's just like this, like there's snow coming. And he's right. The snow started. So we make it along that ridge. I was so scared because if you slip and fall, like me, for example, I'm going to take him down and we're going to die. This is so scary, so terrifying. And then you could see my partner with his little red jacket just kind of like going down there like a little billy goat and making his way down. And I was like, whoa. And then it was like a whiteout. Oops, sorry. Then it was like a whiteout condition. It was so snowy, and I didn't see him anymore. But I wasn't concentrating on him anyways at that point. I was like,
All
okay,
right.
Francis, just one foot in front of the other. Let's make it.
All right. So let's get to the
Yes.
juice of what happened.
Yes. So we get to one section where now you have to go down. You have to rappel down. Now, normal mountaineer folks, they're rappelling kind of backwards down. I've only gone, honestly, mountain climbing once in my life outside, and I've done a couple little trips to the gym. So that was the extent of my experience. I think Pemba thought that I had done this for a long time.
Probably, yeah.
I bet you my partner told him, "Oh, Francis is experienced."
Because he wouldn't have taken you up there, yeah, if he knew.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think so. I don't
Yeah.
think so. Nobody
So
in
you're
their right
going-
mind would have taken me up there. So he said to me, he goes, "Okay, backward." He spoke some words. I said, "Okay." So we're attached to all these ropes, thank God, to each other, and so I'm rappelling backward down, and it's really super steep, and so it was not working. So then he goes, "Okay, we turn around," and I'm like, "Okay." So now you rappel face forward.
Wow.
I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I said, "Okay, all right, I guess this is what we do." And so I'm going face forward. The wind is hitting me. My leg is still hurting from before. I'm like, this is miserable. And I'm just quiet because I can't really talk to the guy. And then he's pretty much further up from me. And he's just kind of yelling down at me, "Okay, go face forward or turn around backward." I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm going. And then I get to the area where you need to jump over those areas. Like before, it was daylight. We could see what we were doing. And now it's dark, it's cold, it's windy, and it's snowing. And my experience of being in like whiteout conditions is like skiing and things like that. At least I had 2 feet on a mountain skiing, and there wasn't any big sections where I could fall. But this was a different story. So he didn't know if I was rappelling backward or he didn't know if I was rappelling forward, because I couldn't see him and I could barely hear him. And then he said to me, he's like, "Jump now," meaning like this is the area to jump over these sections,
Crevasse,
right?
right, yeah.
And I said to him, "Well, left or right? What do I do? I don't know." And he said left, right? And I thought to myself, okay, is that his left? Is it my left? Like, I don't know. And I thought, okay, I just got to make a split decision. Let's just do the best. Well, I made the wrong decision. I jumped left, as best as I could, and I'm just blindly going, and boom, I fell. I fell hard. I fell deep into this crevasse.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness, my eyes were bright open, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I'm falling. And then eventually the rope just kind of just stops. And I look down, and it was the most euphoric, like gorgeous, serene scene I've ever seen in my entire life. It is crystal like blues and aquamarines.
Wow.
And just these gorgeous, gorgeous blue colors all around. And it's all ice, right? And it's all like these massive like icicles coming up from below. So it's all these sharp, pointed, I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah.
Things that could really just slice through my body, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. So first it was like gorgeous. I'm like, this is beautiful. It's like being in heaven or something. I don't know. You go through all these, my mind was just going through so many different things. And so it was gorgeous for probably like 2 seconds. And then it kicked in like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die here.
So you're hanging by the rope.
I'm hanging by the rope. I'm probably about, people always ask me, how far down do you think you were? And I think I was probably about 10, 12 feet down.
Okay.
I don't know. I just couldn't gauge exactly.
And
so
I'm
holding onto the rope. I'm connected to the rope, thank goodness. And the rope is connected to Pemba, but he's further up on the mountain. He doesn't know where in the world I am. And I'm screaming and I'm crying and I'm like, help, help. And all you have is like an echo. I'm deep in this crevasse. I've never experienced this in my life.
Anybody has, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, looking back now, I think to myself, who experiences this? And the only people I can think of is like people who train for avalanche rescue. Honestly, that is probably the only people in this world that could experience something like this. Because who in the world gets stuck in a crevasse? Me. So Pemba could feel the tug on the rope. He felt something, right? And he's an expert, Sherpa, he's an
Right.
expert guide, so he knew something was wrong. And it felt like hours until he came to where I was. And so eventually I'm crying, I'm miserable. I'm like, I don't know who I'm crying and screaming to, but I don't know, the crevice gods, who knows?
Yeah.
And so he comes over and he leans his head over and he looks at me and he says, "Oh." And I'm like, "Yeah, oh." And he's super calm, which is wonderful. I was not. I was hysterical. I'm
Get me out.
screaming. I'm like, "Help, help, help," right? And he looks down at me and this is his famous phrase. He says, "We go." And I'm thinking, yeah, we go. Where are we going? And I thought, I'm going to die. There's no way out. I can't get out of this. I'm so far down. Like he tried to pull on the rope to try to pull me out, but there's no way. There's no way. I'm heavy,
Mhm.
and this guy is like, I don't know, maybe 90 pounds, 5 foot tall. He's this little guy. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Right. And he's very calm and collected and very chill. And he says to me, he's like, "We go." And I was like getting frustrated, going, okay, I hear you. Where are we going? How am I going to get out of here? So he thought really quickly and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I'm going to throw my ice axe down to you because I couldn't reach mine. Mine's in the pack behind me, right?
Mhm.
I couldn't reach anything. Plus, I was terrified to even take my hand off the rope. And
Sure.
he says, "I'm going to throw my ice axe down to you and you catch it." And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, one, this is his prized possession. This is all this man owns. I cannot lose this thing. Two, what if this slices me,
Yeah.
and
You're done. Yeah.
and I'm done. And three, most important three, I need to catch this because without catching this, there's no way out.
Yeah.
So I'm just, my heart's beating, my heart's
Wow.
beating. It's snowing. I can't see at this point. I can't even remember if I had my sunglasses on or not. I don't think I did. Those might have fallen off of me at some point. Things did fall off of me. I don't know what
Sure.
it was. Wasn't thinking. And I thought to myself, okay, 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 you can do this. You can do this, right? So he drops the ice axe and I'm like, "Frances, keep your eyes open." I was so scared. And I took my hand off the rope and I caught it. And I'm like,
Wow.
and I just held it to my chest for like a split second. And I'm like, oh my God, I caught this. Thank God. Right. And I looked up at him and he's smiling like, okay, this is going to be fine. And I'm thinking, okay, this is only the beginning. My God, now what do I do? Right. So he says to me, he says, okay, swing the rope back and forth and basically kind of like Spider-Man your way out of here. Move your body to one section, jam your crampon into the ice here, pull yourself up with the ice axe, and then move your body over to the other side and pull yourself up and do the same on the left and the right and just kind of move your way all the way up. Okay, sounds, easy enough, but in reality, that's not easy. At least not for me. Even when the crampon goes into the ice, it's like this tiny, tiny little
Yeah.
section, right? I am tired. I'm exhausted. We'd been on this mountain for so long. I'm in pain. I'm cramping. I mean, everything is going on with me.
God. Unbelievable.
And I was like, okay, I got to do this, right? So I moved myself as best as I could. Thank God I was in this kind of like tiny little section so that my body could do that.
Sure.
And I got my crampon in at one point, pulled myself up from the ice axe, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. But guess what? My body was so tired. My body fell down.
Oh my
So many
God.
times my body just fell back down to the original position.
Wow.
And it's snowing harder and I'm cold and I'm
Panic.
miserable. Panic is setting in. I mean, talk about adrenaline. I think the adrenaline was gone from me at that point.
Yeah.
I was just exhausted. I just wanted to go to sleep. And he was like, we go, we go. That's all he
We
kept
go.
saying was we go. And I thought, okay, we're going to go. We're going to go. I don't even know how long it took me to do this, but I did shimmy my way up. I did
Wow.
my Francis Spider-Man, technique. And he was able to finally reach the back of my pack and then throw me over. And I just fell onto the snow, so exhausted. And I'm just like, okay, good. We're done. We weren't done. We were not done. We were probably, I don't know, I don't think I have a picture of exactly where we were on the mountain.
That's
But
okay.
anyways,
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to fall asleep. I was like, can I take a rest? And he said, no way. The storm's getting worse at this point.
Wow.
And I get it, And the snow's just falling on me and falling on me. He lifted me up And he's like, we go. I was like, oh my God. So now, whiteout conditions. We were going to go down. I think the original plan was to go down the way we came up, right? He's guided many people on this mountain. He's familiar with the mountain, but he even admitted, he goes, I don't know where we are. And I thought, oh my God, this is scary, right? And I was like, okay. So he says, we go Sherpa route. Okay, the Sherpa route is the fastest route. It's the steepest route.
But
And he knew we needed to get back down to base
of
camp because this
course,
storm
survival. Yeah.
is hitting us hard. And the risk of avalanche is super high in these
Right.
areas. You know, you have no clue when it's going to happen. Absolutely no clue. So I said, okay, we go Sherpa route. I mean, what else am I going to say, right? So we go over to this other section of the mountain, and it was scarier than even the other area when we
I bet.
rappelled down. He's closer to me now because he's afraid of losing me, and I'm so glad. I'm just like, you stick next to me, please, you know. And so we go Sherpa route, and we're going down. We're rappelling forward, facing forward, and my heart is just pounding so hard. My leg's still killing me from when I hit it in the mountain previously. I need to go to the bathroom. I mean, you name it. All these
Yeah.
things. I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. You don't want to take off any clothing. It's so cold up there. And now many, many hours had passed. Many hours. Our porter that is left at the base camp was like, this is not right. They're not here. And he was really worried about us. So what he does, he leaves base camp and he comes up to search for us.
Good.
Like a search and rescue.
I
There's
bet.
nobody else there's no other climbers at base camp because they've all summited and then packed up because they're smart. They're like, I don't want to be stuck in this snowstorm, right? So the porter then takes off from base camp and comes up Sherpa route, smart, to come looking for us. And we were just like two little specks on the mountain, right? I've got a black jacket on. Pemba's got his bright blue one on. By a miracle, I swear to God, it's a miracle. This porter found us. He
That's
spotted us.
amazing.
Is amazing. I don't even know. That day, I was so lucky. So many things were just in my favor. Not in my favor and in my favor.
Yeah.
So that porter finds us, right? So he comes up to where we are. I'm exhausted. And he grabs me because I'm really ready to collapse at this point. Many points ago. And then Pemba, said goodbye to us. And he's like, I'm going to go down to base camp. And, he's ready to take a rest, I'm sure, as well. So then this porter speaks no English, but I didn't care. He grabbed me. And so we just kind of like hobbled down the rest of the mountain together.
Amazing.
It took so long. And then finally we get to base camp and I was like, oh, good. My tent's there and my boyfriend's there. I'm like, I just want to give him a hug and kiss and just fall asleep and just rest.
or a punch.
Yeah, something, right? Or
Right.
go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, like the bodily functions were also necessary. So we get to base camp and I unzip the tent and I go in and I'm like, whoa, all I see is one sleeping bag. My sleeping bag. And I'm like, my boyfriend's not here. And then I get out of the tent and I go over to Pemba and the porter. They're starting to pack up already. And I was like, well, what? I don't even know why they're packing up. And I said, hey, where's my boyfriend, right? And the porter says to me, he goes, oh, he go. And I was like, where's he going? Well, like, where is he? I'm looking around. There's nothing. It's just snow. There's nothing in this little base camp area. And I go, where'd he go? And he said, oh, he go to the village. And I'm like, what? He left? He's gone? My mind couldn't even fathom this, that he's just gone. And I was like, okay. And I said, you know what? I need to sleep. I need to rest because I'm like,
your body's just done.
My body's thrashed. My mind's not thinking. There's angers welling up in me. And I said, just give me some time. And they said, no, you can't rest. They said, we need to go. It's snowing hard. It's really snowing hard and it's cold, right? And I said, what? And they said, we will pack up all your stuff for you and we go. And I was like, oh my God. And I said to them, how many hours is it to the village? 3 hours.
Oh my God.
That's for an average alpineer, experienced mountaineer, 3 hours. For me, I'm going really slow. I think it took us like 4 hours.
So you made it back down.
I said, you've got to be kidding me. So I went to the bathroom, did all the things I needed to do. They packed up my stuff. My headlamp didn't work anymore. I couldn't find
Wow,
my batteries. So it's
that's
dark
crazy.
now. It's nighttime. And so I'm just, laboring along behind them, following their lights because my headlamp's not working. Oh God. And so finally I see the lights, in the distance. I'm like, that's got to be the village. And they're like, yeah, that's the village. And I'm like, it's probably like
Somebody like,
midnight at this
right.
point. We get to the village and these little tea houses. It's just like a little wooden house, basically very small, makeshift kind of things up in the mountain there. And we get into the village. Oh, sorry, we get into the village, and then we get into this little tea house, and there's a couple mountaineers there hanging around the little fire pit, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, we were so worried about you. You made it." And I said, "Yeah, barely,
Barely, yeah.
barely." I'm like on my hands and knees at this point, and I was like, "Where's my boyfriend?" Right? And they're like, "Oh, he's in the room." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I find the room, knock on the door opens, he's fast asleep,
God,
and I woke him up, and I'm just like, "Hey." And I'm like, "I'm I'm here, I'm alive." And he was like, "Oh, good," and I
God,
said, "No, no, no, you don't even know. My first question was, why did you leave me?" I was cussing like you don't even know. And I'm
I
not a
bet.
person that does that. And just the anger, like the 4 hour trek to that village, all that was going through my mind was, what am I going to say to this man? What am I going to say to him? Because I'm so angry. You don't leave somebody. You don't. I mean, this is like just
Twice. Top.
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't leave somebody. I mean, at least wait for me at base camp. I
Yep.
mean, I don't know. And so I was so angry and just yelling and screaming, and everybody I'm sure heard my whole
I bet. Yeah.
rant, you know. And he was just pretty calm and quiet, and he just said, I said, "Why did you leave me?" And he said to me, he said, "I figured you'd make it down just fine with Pemba." And I said, "Well, you know what? I didn't. And how could you predict that?" And he's like, "Oh, I figured you're a good athlete, and you're in good hands with Pemba. He's done this mountain many times."
Wow.
And
What an
that was his
asshole.
logic. And I said to him, I'm like, "I don't understand. Why did you even unclip from us at the summit? Why did you go down by yourself?" And he said, "Well, I really wanted to train. I'm training
Oh
for
God.
K2. So this is what I needed to do." That's what he said. He's like, "I needed to do this.
Forget your life or how important your life
Forget
is.
my
I
life."
got to do
And
my training.
yeah, exactly. And he knows that I'm not an expert
Right.
alpinist. I'm not. I've never done these kind of things. Never, you know? And I didn't even think of the oxygen part. Like
Right.
somebody only mentioned that later on. They're like, "Well, did you have oxygen? You're at over 20,000 feet." And I was like, "No, no, my partner doesn't do this with oxygen." And
So he gave you this excuse. And you told me later he didn't even apologize. So tell us
yep.
what happened the next few days. I mean, with him. You
So
know.
then we still had a good probably 6 days left to trek down the mountain because we're super far up here on Mount Everest. It's not like, okay, let's hop in a, something and just head down. And so I was so angry, so angry. Yeah, he didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say I'm so sorry for what happened. Like that evening when I was screaming at him, he didn't even know the whole story, obviously. I was so
Yeah.
angry and
Of
tired. I
course.
didn't give him the full story. The next day, so I slept that night, obviously. Next day we wake up, we're having breakfast with like the other, mountaineers and stuff there in this little tea house. I recount my story, and everybody's got their mouth down to the ground like, "Oh my God, how
You
could you
know.
have survived
Let me
this
ask you this
fall?"
question, Francis. I thought about this because you told me the story several times.
Hmm.
What was the reaction of the other mountaineers towards your ex-boyfriend? Did he get dirty looks? Did anybody say anything to him? Because if I was one of the other mountaineers, I would have gone up to him and said, "You're a real asshole." So what
Yeah.
was the reaction of
Yeah.
them towards him?
They were angry. They were definitely angry. They talked to him privately, so
Okay.
I don't know exactly what they said to him. I mean, they could tell how emotional I was. I was
Right.
crying when I was telling them the
So
story. And so here's my version of the story. And I thought, and then Pemba was off in the distance with his other Sherpa friends and stuff. And I said, "Pemba, please come over here. Please tell me your version of the story because I want them to hear what you witnessed. This is
right.
my version of it. So he then told his version of it, right? And it was exactly as mine. It's not like I
Wow.
made up any of this stuff, and they were like, oh my goodness, right? And everybody was clapping. Everybody was clapping at the
Maybe
end of my story
it's a
because
story,
they
yeah,
were
movie,
so
yeah,
happy. Pemba saved my life, not my
yeah,
boyfriend,
yeah.
who knows how to do this, with his eyes closed, but Pemba. And I owe
Yeah.
my life to that man. I gave him
Absolutely.
everything I had, all the money I had. I
I'm
said, if you
sure.
want any of my mountaineering stuff, it's yours. Please, I want to give you everything
I
I
bet.
have. And he was like, no, no, no. They're so sweet. They're like, I don't want anything from you. And I was like, no, no, no. You have to take anything I can give you. Please, please,
Okay.
Anyways, so yeah, the other mountaineers were pretty pissed off, I would think. They couldn't believe my story. Then I didn't talk to my boyfriend for about 3 days. I was so angry, and it was just like the most silent, depressing time coming off the mountain. And eventually I did. So eventually we spoke to one another, but I was still this anger was still sitting inside of me, and
I bet. Yeah.
rightfully so. So eventually we made it down to the base of the mountain, and then at that point you get on the plane, and obviously you fly to Kathmandu, and then the whole trek
Okay.
and expedition
So
is over.
yeah, I mean, so we don't. I mean, obviously you're not with him
Yeah.
anymore, and you
No,
guys.
not with
I
him.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure every woman listening is like, you better not have married this guy.
No way.
Especially we're coming up to Valentine's Day. I'm like, this is not a love story.
No.
So, it's an incredible story, Frances, and you took us into great detail. Tell us, what is your message? I mean, here you are, this incredible athlete, probably should have died on that mountain, and now you have a son, you have a beautiful life, but I know you've told a story to your mother, who I know very well, and your friends. What is your message to everyone listening?
My message is pretty simple, to be honest. You do not leave anybody that you're with. You do not abandon anybody that you're with, whether it's your partner, whether it's a stranger. When you're doing anything, any of these extreme, treks, adventures, you do not leave whomever you're with. You absolutely do not. And that's my message to everybody. I don't care if you like that person or you don't like that person. You don't abandon them. You never know what can happen. You just absolutely don't know. And I experienced that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you went, sometimes you said you heard the red signals in your head, but you didn't listen to
Yeah.
that. So maybe listen to your inner voice sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah. Listen to your gut. I mean, even in the beginning part of this trekking, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not experienced for this. I could have turned back. I probably could have turned back and then just stayed with the porter, for example, at base
At the
camp,
base,
and
right?
made my way back to the village to have a nice rest in a warm,
Yeah.
a warm place. But yeah, listen to your gut. Definitely see those red flags and don't abandon whomever you're with.
Yeah.
That's my big thing.
Well, it's an amazing story. I really appreciate you sharing this with all of our listeners on Spotify and on YouTube. We're going to watch this video. I'm going to put some links at the bottom. If you have questions for Frances, please leave comments, and maybe we'll have her on later again. But Frances, I'm just happy because you're alive, and you've lived a full life, and you've had many adventures. But this is it'll be hard to top this one.
I think so. I don't even think I could top this one. Even giving birth and having a baby was not as extreme as falling down in Nepal
and surviving Mount Everest. Okay, well, thank you so much. And again, thanks for everyone for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Voices of a Stranger. Have a great day, everybody. God bless.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Reza. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, Frances.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this week. Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or on your webpage at thevoicesofastranger.com. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend and subscribe to the show. Tune in next week for a new guest. Until next time, keep living life with passion and make each day count.